Snicker of Magic, Chapter 17. Biscuit was thrilled when Jewel told me I could let her inside the lube and die. She zoomed in and shook the raindrops out of her fur, and then she walked around, getting to know people. Every hairstylist and mechanic and client in the whole shop reached out to pet her, which Biscuit didn't mind a bit. When it comes to affection, she knows how to dish it out. I helped Rosie walk her to a seat closer to the front of the shop, where she could hear Oliver's story. Rosie had just sat down when Biscuit pounced up in her lap. At first, Rosie let out a surprised oof. But then Biscuit turned towards Rosie and nuzzled her cheek. Rosie smiled. "Well, hello there, darling." Once I'd seen that the two of them were settled, I pulled a seat for myself beside Jonah and told him, "Don't forget, I need to talk to you about something later. It's an important something." Jonah's smile pinched into a frown. "Important how?" "I'll tell you later," I said, because I had more important things to focus on. Things like who the hayseed the witch woman was and how the heck I was going to undo her stupid curse. The room got quiet as we all settled in for Oliver's tale. The only sound I could hear was the snip, snip, snip of Jewel's scissors. Oliver tapped the dimple on his chin, collecting his thoughts. He started his story with the part I knew but never got sick of hearing. Many years ago, Midnight Gulch was a secret place. The mountains hid the town high up away from the rest of the world, and the river surrounded the mountain and kept it safe. And the forest stood up tall around the river and caught all the town's secrets and songs in its branches. The town had to stay secret, you see, because the people who lived there had magic in their veins. Some families had more powerful magic than others, of course. Some families, like the triplets, had flashy magic. They say Owen Triplet could catch starlight in glass jars. He got in trouble for selling his starlight jars to tourists, though. People no more than pay for their jars when the starlight would bust loose and head back for disguise. Starlight doesn't take good to domestication. Note to self, Jonah whispered me, stars don't make good pets. Duly noted, I agreed. Oliver continued. Some families had a purpose to their magic, though. The Terrys could conjure up the rain. The Smiths could bake secrets into their pies. "Tell about the Hancocks," Charlie Sue yelled. Oliver rolled his eyes. The Hancocks could turn themselves invisible. He closed his eyes and sighed contentedly. "I wouldn't mind if they started doing that again, honestly." "Me neither," Charlie Sue chimed in. "I'd follow you around all day and bug the daylights out of you." "You already do that every day," Oliver laughed. He cleared his throat and continued. "And when the Weatherly boys played music, the whole world danced and sang. But there was another powerful family back then, the Thistle family. Nobody talks about them much, but they had the strangest and most exciting magic of all. In fact, back then the most notorious woman in all of Midnight Gulch was a young lady named Isabella Thistle." Thunder rumbled low and long over the rooftop. I didn't know if it was the thunder or the name Isabella Thistle that sent the shiver down my spine. And it wasn't just me. Everybody in the beauty shop shivered or rubbed their arms. "Now, the men in the Thistle family weren't much tootin'," Oliver said. "The most magical thing those men ever did was drink their weight in moonshine. But the Thistle women were powerful creatures, and Isabella was the most powerful of them all." Even though my heart was already drumming, yes, I asked Oliver, "So Isabella was the witch woman?" Oliver shrugged his shoulders. "She was no more of a witch than any other woman in the Gulch. Lots of women have magic in their veins. The problem was that most women despised Isabella Thistle. They were jealous of her because the Weatherly boys liked her so much. They hated her because she spoke her mind, even if it made folks angry. They hated her kind of beautiful. I always heard tell that if you passed Isabella Thistle on the street, you'd think she looked very ordinary. But she had a way about her, an easy laugh and a strong will. She didn't care what people thought of her. She was bossy, opinionated, and feisty. Isabella wore her hair in a long black braid. She kept a yellow flower behind her ear. To be in her presence, they said, was enchanting, and that's why some people called her a witch. They said she wasn't pretty enough to get the Weatherly boys' attention. They said she must have put a spell on them somehow." "But you don't think she did?" Jonah asked around a mouthful of ice cream. "Jonah," Oliver sighed, "I'm about to give you some advice about women, man to man." "Here we go," and Jill shook her head. Jonah settled his carton of Aunt Ruth's pumpkin sampler in his lap. "I'm listening." Here's what you need to remember, said Oliver. Women who make you laugh and who make you think and who are also happen to wear yellow flowers in their hair are always dangerous. And if they happen to have magic in their veins, then heaven help us all. You either give up and fall in love or get out of town. Isabella wasn't a witch no more than I'm a trapeze swinger, and she didn't cast any love spell on the brothers Threadbare either. They both fell in love with her. She fell in love with both of them. Both? I blew my two long bangs away from my eyes. How's it possible to fall in love with two people? Stone Weatherly courted Isabella first. Oliver popped open a carton of blackberry sunrise. He was quiet for a time as he considered the memories melting in his mouth. Nobody knows what went wrong, but Stone and Isabella broke up. Not long after, Barry started courting her. I don't know if Stone still took a shine to Isabella or if he hated the thought of his brother courting her, but that's how the jealousy first got stirred up between them. The Weatherlys weren't jealous of each other's fame the way most people think. They were both plumb crazy over a girl. Isabella wouldn't have it. She ended up turning both of the boys down on account of their stupid antics. And that turned both of them bitter and angry and sad. Eventually, the brothers had enough of each other, and they came up with a duel. And because they didn't know anybody who could twist magic like Isabella Thistle, they asked her to come up with a curse. And she was so mad at both of them, she agreed. It was a strange magic those Thistle women had. Sad magic. And it worked? I asked. My voice came out like a bullfrog croak. Of course I already knew the curse had worked. I traveled through enough dark nights in the pickled jalapeno to know it was still working just fine. They believed it worked, Oliver said to me. He set his eyes directly on mine, the way you do when you want somebody to hear more besides the words you're saying out loud. They believed it, he repeated. I doubt there was any real magic to that curse, but Stone Weatherly believed he was a cursed man, and that's all that mattered. Rosie Walker cleared her throat. She was still holding Biscuit, scratching behind my dog's ears. Biscuit panted happily, her mouth wide open with a very satisfied smile. Sorry to interrupt, Rosie said, but this witch woman, you said her family had a peculiar kind of magic. What was it exactly? Legend says that the Thistle women were shadow catchers. Way back during the war between the states, soldiers would pay the Thistles to catch shadows and turn them loose over paths and trails to scare off the other side. People say Isabella used to hide bird shadow inside the hymnals at the church. When the choir stood up to sing, 100 shadows came fluttering up off the pages, and people started shouting and hollering and carrying on. She had the gift. Seems a sad way to live, though, collecting shadows. If ever there's a waste of magic, I reckon it's that. I'm sure it didn't start out as a waste, Rosie Walker drawled. Maybe the Thistle women collected sunsets once upon a time. Maybe they trapped stars in mason jars, or maybe, her hands fluttered excitedly, maybe they collected memories. I've heard tell of that, about mountain people who could keep memories and songs, hush them up for decades inside boxes and bottles. Oliver tapped his finger against his lips, choosing his words extra carefully. A feller once told me that Isabella Thistle took something that belonged to the brothers Threadbare. Right after she set the curse on them, she stole something that belonged to them, and then she lit out of town. Of course, most people think she took money, but I don't think that was it. Oliver shrugged his shoulders. Don't matter much what she took or what those brothers did. We can't undo what's been done. Elvis ran his fingers through his hair and said, Reckon there's no magic left in Midnight Gulch. And most of the folks in the shop all shook their heads and mumbled their reckon nots, and you got that right. I knew better, though. Words as beautiful as magic spells, hidden to most people, but shining at me, threaded all across the ceiling of Jewel Pickett's Lubin die. Winsome, wonder, believe. I didn't have to reckon anything about what magic might be left in Midnight Gulch. I knew it was still there. Sure wish they'd have made amends, Oliver said sadly. Tell you what I wish. Jewel swept around her station. I wish somebody'd redo that trashy-looking gallery out there. Why don't you get to fixing that, Oliver? Oh, shoot, said Oliver. Nobody in this town could paint that thing right. I suppose I could have somebody plow it down, but that makes me too sad to think on. Too much history in that wall. I'd like to see it painted up again, but nobody here can do it. At exactly that moment, I saw one of my favorite words shimmering against the big window of Jewel's shop. Holly. Mama, I hollered. Everybody in the shop stared at me. My mama could paint the gallery easy. She'll paint something wonderful and winsome all over that wall. She's an exceptional artist. She really is, Jonah quickly agreed. She has a portfolio and everything. Holly's painted murals all over the southeastern United States. Why hasn't anybody thought of that until now? Ponder Waller asked. I've always said Holly Harness was the most talented girl ever to come out of Midnight Gulch. You think she'd be willing to paint the gallery, Felicity? She might, I said, as the most powerful feelings came swirling up inside my belly, hope and pride and happiness. They snuffed out all the sad I'd felt over the duel and over leaving Midnight Gulch. Holly Harness might paint again. This was the best kind of happy I'd felt in ages. Also, the gallery was gargantuan. We'd have to stay in town at least until it was done. Oliver thought that was a fine idea. I locked eyes with Jonah and saw a halo of words spinning around his spiky blonde hair. Clever, stalwart, brilliant, splendiferous. Spindidly planned, Felicity Pickle, Jonah grinned. That night, while everybody else was sound asleep, I sat on the floor of my makeshift bedroom, spilling my heart out to my dog. If Mama starts painting again, that doesn't mean the curse is broken, but it means there's hope, right? Biscuit pressed her paw against my hand. The thing is, Isabella, Thistle wasn't some mean old witch out for revenge. She said that the Red Bears were cursed until cords aligned. I don't know what the hayseed cords aligning means. My voice trailed off as I fumbled with the locket around my neck. But I'll bet the Threadbares figured it out. Maybe that's why they tried to find each other. Biscuit cocked her head sadly. You're right, I groaned. We're doomed. I flopped back on the floor. Biscuit snuggled against my arm and fell asleep. I should drop out of the duel. I should pack my bags and give it in to my rambling fate. I knew the facts. Pickles are cursed with wandering hearts. We're cursed to fail at everything we try, but I also knew this fact. Once upon a time, Midnight Gulch was a magical place, and the brothers Threadbare were two of the most magical people who ever lived here. I shared Stone Weatherly's gypsy fate. Did I share his magic too? There's still magic here, I dared to whisper, even though nobody was awake now except me and the midnight moon. I'll bet the midnight moon had a good laugh over that, because the kind of magic that found me the next morning is definitely not what I was expecting.